find one, I mean, if you have more than one, you're just really blessed. And I have several godly men in my life, but there's two or three that are like my blood. And what am I doing? Here we go. I got a little flustered. Okay, if you have your Bible, turn to Daniel chapter 6. We're about a chapter a month, aren't we? No, I'm playing. Hopefully we'll grab this whole chapter today. Daniel chapter 6. Come on, I need to hear those pages. There you go. You're already there. Not bad. Okay, this is the chapter on the story of Daniel and the lion's den. Believe it or not, he is in his late 80s now. Isn't that incredible? So I'm going to chase a rabbit from the get-go. Listen to me, Elder Barry. Those of you who are seasoned in life, when you read this, you're going to see a man who still has an edge. He still has a hunger for the things of God. He's still like right in the thick of it. Now, I'm not suggesting that you've done this, but spiritually, you can't get in your lazy boy, kick it back, and watch The Price is Right the rest of your life. Spiritually, we need you. We desperately, desperately need you. I'm so thankful. Terry and I have been in all kinds of churches, singing and ministering and stuff, and I mean, there's churches that are young and hip, and it's awesome. Those are awesome. But I want my kids to grow up around some 80-year-old on the edge. I do. Not stodgy, fuddy-duddy, but I'm talking about 80-year-olds that are still Daniels, that are still like, let's go. I'm going until my last breath, I'm living on the edge. Isn't that awesome? Okay, so he's in his late 80s here. This is the man, all right? Okay, Daniel 6. It pleased Darius. Find my note before I get going. Oh, good grief.
Are y'all teleprompter?
Oh, man. Yeah. What in the world? Oh, here they are. Wow. You're the one that needs to be doing that, because I could have made stuff up for about an hour.
Like man on the ground.
There you go. Yep. Okay, please Darius to appoint 120 satraps to rule throughout the kingdom with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. Daniel had been a governor and was still a governor all these years. Okay? The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. What do you think is fixing to happen? I mean, I know you know the lion's den, but he was so distinguished. He was the king's boy as an 88-year-old man. What's fixing to happen? Trouble. Yeah, the young bucks who want his job, watch him, well, we'll go there another time. At this, the administrators and satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Finally, these men said, "We will never find any basis for charges against this man, Daniel, unless it has something to do with the law of his God." Interesting. So, they come as a group to the king and say, "Oh, King Darius, live forever." The royal administrators, prefects, satraps, advisors, and governors have all agreed that the king should issue an edict and enforce the decree that anyone who prays to any god or man during the next 30 days, except to you, O king, there's that Eddie Haskell thing going on, shall be thrown into the lion's den. Oh, now, O king, issue the decree and put it in writing so that it cannot be altered in accordance with the laws of the Medes and Persians, which cannot be repealed. So King Darius put the decree in writing. Now Daniel learned that the decree had been published. He goes home in his upstairs room where the windows open toward Jerusalem, and 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God, watch this, just as he had done before. Since he was a teenager, guys, young people, he started this chapters ago as a teenager, and here he is in his late 80s, and he never missed a beat. 3 times a day, he knew where he was going to be. It was a part of his life. It's not a preference, it's a conviction. It's a huge difference. We cannot live by preference. We must live by conviction. Okay. These men went as a group and found Daniel praying, asking God for help. So they went to the king and spoke to him about his royal decree. Now, let's remind you, didn't you publish this decree that in the next 30 days anyone read it? And the king answered, yeah, I did. And then they said to the king in verse 13, well, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, they didn't see him. They wouldn't say that he's the governor or he's over us. They bring up his past. Ooh. Remember a sermon several weeks ago that says your failure does not define who you are. Your past brought you here to the day, and it has defined, but it doesn't have to define your future. Remember all that? Okay. So they bring up his past. Where was I? Verse 13. Yeah, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, O king, or to the decree you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. When the king heard, he was greatly distressed. He wasn't distressed over what Daniel was doing. He was distressed over, oh my goodness, what have I done? I'm fixing to get in a mess here. Because he appreciated Daniel. Of course, Daniel helped the whole, whatever to prosper. When the king heard this, he was distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sundown to save him. Then the men went as a group to the king again and said, remember, O king, according to the law of Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that the king issues can be changed. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. Then the king said to Daniel, may your God whom you serve continually rescue you. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his ring, and the nobles sealed it with their ring. In other words, they sealed it 2 times so that neither one could, the nobles didn't want the king sneaking and, breaking his little seal, putting his ring back on it. So they put theirs. There could be no hanky-panky here. And so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating, without any entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. What's the difference when we read these next few verses about the trouble, the stuff stirred up in the palace, and the peace in the lion's den? It's amazing. Okay. At the first light of dawn, he probably hadn't even slept at all, the king. At the first light of dawn, I've been waiting for this. The king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, son of the living God, has your God whom you serve continually been able to rescue you? Daniel answered calmly, O king, live forever. Yeah, my God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done any wrong before you, O king. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted, no wound was found on him because he had trusted in his God. At the king's command, the men who had falsely accused Daniel were brought in and thrown into the lion's den, along with their wives and children. And before they reached the floor of the den, the lions overpowered them and crushed all of their bones. Then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, men of every language throughout the land, may you prosper greatly. I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, and he endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. This is awesome. He rescues and he saves. He performs signs and wonders in the heavens and on the earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Okay, stay with me, all right? Daniel was a man, we read up there, of power and authority and position. He was distinguished, no corruption were found in him. Okay, what's this? We too are a people of power, authority, and position. Stay with me. You can jot these down. People of power. Ephesians 1, 18 through 21. Ephesians 3, verse 20. 2 Timothy 1, 7. Acts 1, 8. Luke 9, 1. It just goes on and on and on and on. We are a people empowered by the Spirit of God. We are also people of authority. Where did those go? I scribbled around here. And people of position. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 6 says that we were in, Ephesians, Paul's talking about, he says, I was in Jesus when he went to the cross. I was in him when he was raised from the dead. And now I am in him, seated at the right hand of God. So we are people of power, authority, and position. Okay? We too are distinguished. What I mean by that is we have been made, born again. We now have the image of God through Jesus inside of us. We are what's distinguishing about us is that the blood of the cross that we sang about today has redeemed us. And as we've been born again, we are made, and we are literally a showcase for the grace of God. That's what distinguishes you. And we are also, there's no corruption found in us. Some of you will, now wait a minute, now, what I'm referring to there is that Paul over and over and over says, we are saints. We are the redeemed. We are a royal priesthood. We are holy. All of those things that we've looked at in the past. That is who we are. Okay? So, I'm setting the stage here. So, just as that's true, this is also true. Daniel had his accuser, and so do we. Okay, don't lose me here. Some of you are going, oh God, here we go on the Satan thing. Listen, let me set the stage. I am not a devil under every bush. Okay? So don't think that. But I do, I mean, the word is so clear that we have, Satan's name literally means accuser. As Daniel had his accusers, we also have an accuser. The verses on that are Revelation 12, verse 10, Zechariah 3, verse 1. It goes on and on. And this is a little stretch. Give me a little leeway here, okay? It's my creative side. Just as we have an accuser, he also wants us in a den. He wants to throw us in a den. Look at 1 Peter chapter 5.